Western New York Tonight is brought to you in part by Pruden and Cant Funeral Home, 242 Genesee Street, Lockport, New York. And by Central Business Systems, 285 Kenmore Avenue, Buffalo, New York. And by Edward Jones Investments, 53 Elizabeth Drive, Lockport, New York.
Welcome to Western New York Live tonight. I'm Tammie Lee Demler, and I'll be your host tonight. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome to Western New York Tonight. I am Tammie Lee Demler. I am a representative of the Pharmacist Society of the State of New York, and I'll remind you that this is a call-in show and would like to hear from you. Our number is 434-1733. Again, that's 434-1733. I'd like to introduce my guest today, Fred Bennes, who is a professor, clinical professor from the State University of New York at Buffalo, School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. I would tell you more about Fred, but I think it's more interesting to have Fred tell us about himself. So Fred, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been here in Western New York since 1974, in spite of what my accent sounds like. I came here to teach in the pharmacy school in what was the graduate program then, and what has now become the introductory or the entry-level degree. The PharmD degree for pharmacists. All pharmacists are now graduating with a doctorate in clinical pharmacy. You actually went back to school to get that very degree, so that's kind of neat. And I have done lots of things in education, in pharmacy education during that time. I also am a physician assistant. I'm the first one that was registered in New York State outside of New York City. And that gave me the ability to bring patient care, direct patient care, into contact with pharmacy education. And that's been fun over the years. And also during that time I have been involved in pharmacy management and physician group management. And I've had a great time, and I'm wrapping up my career this summer, and I'm retiring.
Very nice. You have interesting plans. I
have lots of plans. I'm really looking forward to doing all kinds of stuff. I'll probably be more busy than I am now.
Well, I thought, Fred, what would be an interesting topic to talk about today in the atmosphere of this recent news of the avian flu versus cold symptoms in general. I thought we could talk a little bit about that from both the pharmacist perspective and the physician assistant perspective. Tell me a little bit about different symptoms that would differentiate the flu versus cold, because it's somewhat confusing, I think, in the world today. Okay.
Now, you did say this program is airing in March of 2006, at the end of March, and you said this is flu season. Well, in fact, flu season is still in place, even though the weather is getting a little bit nicer. So it's a realistic thing to think about it that is still occurring. You know, both of them are caused by viruses, and you really can't tell the difference between the two at the early stages, especially if the cold is more severe and the influenza is a little bit less severe. But after a few hours or a day or two, it's pretty evident when you have a cold and when you have influenza, even though both, I'll say again, are viral infections. The flu, you get a headache and you feel tired beyond belief, and aches and pains and a fever. And really with a cold, you might get one or two of those things just a little bit, but boy, you get the flu. People say all the time, oh, I had the flu 2 or 3 times last winter. But every now and then somebody will say, boy, I had the flu. Well, that was the flu. It's evident. It's really tough. Whereas a cold, usually characterized by a runny nose and maybe a scratchy throat, maybe not even a temperature. Flu always finishes up with a cough, and it lasts several days, maybe even a week or two. Flu definitely takes you down.
Are they both equally contagious? That's a question frequently asked. Do you feel as though that...
Sure. They're both viral infections. They both spread by respiratory droplets, you know, that people sneeze and cough out, and they both spread by getting on surfaces and other people touching those surfaces with their hands and subsequently touching either their mouth or their nose. So they both spread like that.
So what can we do to not catch it?
Well, the number one thing is get a flu shot. There's flu shots every year. In the last couple of years, there's kind of been a shortage of them, and so we weren't encouraged as much as a society for all of us to go out and get flu shots. But for sure, there's nothing to going and rolling up your sleeve and getting a small injection in the fall, and boy, the protection is just so super compared to getting the disease or the illness. It's really terrible. The second thing is, same thing with colds. The more times a day you wash your hand, the fewer colds and fewer cases of flu you have. I mean, that's been shown in several studies. If you're washing your hands often, you're less likely to get it, regardless of where you are, who you deal with, whatever.
Interesting. Now, I know that we've talked before on different shows about the pharmacists in states other than New York State being able to immunize.
Sure.
What's your feeling about the benefit to the immunization impact in other states with pharmacists being able to immunize?
Well, I'm a pharmacist and a pharmacy advocate, but I want to put that aside for a second. And I just want to go and look at how the society is doing at getting immunized. It's not working. It's nice if we can get 60 or 80 million people immunized, but there's 300 million of us. And you have to get more than 60 or 80 million out of 300 million to have an impact to stop transmission, to reduce overall rate of illness. We just have to do a better job. Well, to do a better job, we've got to figure out how to get those flu shots into people. Pharmacists are the single most distributed healthcare provider.
Meaning they're accessible.
Meaning there's more contact with pharmacists by consumers than there is contact with any other health practitioner. Now, I can't brag that pharmacists are out there doing wonderful things with all that contact all the time, but they are there. That is an opportunity. It's easier to go to a pharmacy than it is to a physician's office, and if that's the place to have it done, so be it. If other health practitioners can step up and get it done, well, then we don't need pharmacists to do it. But it's not happening.
Unmet need.
We need to get everybody out there pulling the cart in the same direction. There's plenty of opportunity. Nobody is going to be cut out of a business opportunity because we have more people out there immunizing. We need to get the immunizations to happen.
I would say another point to be made is with the pandemic potential of these flu breakouts that they're speaking of. You know, we had smallpox, you know, being a different type of vaccination strategy. You know, now avian flu. You know, the thought of mass vaccination is really not unlike that which we're thinking of potentially running into. Having a pharmacist out there in a community setting where you could actually just go to the pharmacy, get a shot to help vaccinate is really something that could help in a pandemic type of an issue, would you say?
Well, if there's a pandemic, we're going to have to do things that we haven't done before. If that's part of the solution, that would be great. That's going to be a major challenge for the society. It's going to be a major challenge for health practitioner of what we're going to do. You know, I'm not trying to be a public health planner here, but we're going to have to do it everywhere. Firehouses, school auditoriums, pharmacies, offices, everywhere. When and if that is an issue.
And hopefully that would never be an issue, but of course that's the discussion in the community right now.
We will have a pandemic someday.
We need to be prepared.
Well, we need to be thoughtful about what we're going to do. And I know that we are being thoughtful in some ways, but I also can be assured that we're not ready yet. We're not ready as a society yet.
With regards to the flu, going back to that, just the traditional flu that we know, you had spoken of a shortage. Was there any kind of discussion as to why the shortage happened, or what happened with that whole scenario?
It's a manufacturing problem, and it does revolve around the finances of making vaccines. What's been happening over 20 years is the number of vaccine producers in the United States has been declining. That put more and more of a burden on the remaining vaccine manufacturers. Well, 2 years ago, one of those vaccine manufacturers, whose plant was based in England, had a problem, and the batch that they were producing, or the whole year supply that they were producing, was not usable. Well, there wasn't really any extra capacity for the other manufacturer to step in and fill the void. It also happened a little bit late. The fewer manufacturers you have, the more likely something like this is going to happen. The U.S. government is aware that this is an issue and has been trying to promote other manufacturers to come online. And there's good news on that front, but we're still not where we need to be, especially if we had a rush job for a pandemic and had to produce huge amounts of vaccine in a short period of time.
Before we break, just a quick summary as to last time you can get a flu shot for it to be effective. Would be there a deadline for getting your flu vaccine in for the year?
No. Anytime you get a vaccine, you're going to be protected for a period of time. But each year, the vaccine changes. So if you got it now, it might offer a small amount of protection, but you're still going to need another one next fall when we have a new set of strains. This is independent of the discussion of avian flu.
Well, again, just a reminder that this is a call-in show. Our number is 434-1733. If you have any questions for Fred or myself, we'd love to hear from you. And in the meantime, after our break, I'd like to talk a little bit more about avian flu. I think that being such a critical issue and having a past experience that was similar, maybe we could talk a little bit about whether or not that was an overinflated scare.
Super.
Very good.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I am an American soldier.
I live the Army values.
I will never
accept defeat.
I am disciplined, physically and mentally tough.
I am a professional.
I am a professional.
I am the guardian of freedom
And the American way of life.
I am an American soldier.
I am the Army National Guard.
Defend freedom. In the Army National Guard, you can. Visit 1-800-GO-GUARD.com today.
Western New York Tonight is brought to you in part by Pruden and Cant Funeral Home, 242 Genesee Street, Lockport, New York. And by Central Business Systems, 285 Kenmore Avenue, Buffalo, New York.